My boss fired me in front of the board, and the only thing anyone remembers is that I smiled and thanked him. I didn't see it coming that morning, but when the words landed terminated, effective immediately, my body reacted before my brain caught up. My hands went cold, my jaw locked. Not panic, more like recognition. No arguing, no scrambling for dignity. I folded my laptop shut, slow on purpose. The hinge made that soft plastic click that somehow felt louder than his voice. Then the words came out of my mouth, calm and steady, like I'd practiced them. Thank you. That should have ended it. Chairs should have moved. People should have stood. Someone should have opened the door. Instead, something shifted. Across the table, the legal director stopped turning pages. His finger stayed wedged between two sheets. He leaned closer to the document, like he'd misread a line. Then his palm hit the table, hard enough to rattle the water glasses. Get a lawyer. Now. Not for me. For them. Nobody interrupted him, not even my boss. The room went still in that wrong way, the kind of silence that feels like everyone forgot the rules at the same time. I stood up. Nobody stopped me. Nobody asked me to sit back down. My name is Asha Moreno, 48 years old. I walked out of the room with my badge still warm against my chest, my legs steady even though my head wasn't. The hallway smelled faintly like burnt coffee. Same smell as every other morning. That almost made me laugh. You ever notice how yelling gets attention, but quiet makes people nervous? I didn't know what would happen next. I just knew something had already gone wrong for them, and it hadn't started with me. The story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Her Fear. It is inspired by real power dynamics, real corporate behavior, and very real emotional consequences. But the characters and events are imagined for storytelling purposes. When the elevator doors closed, my phone stayed silent. For the first time in years, no one needed me immediately. I stared at my reflection in the brushed metal wall and realized I wasn't angry yet. That part came later. I didn't feel strong walking out. Honestly, I felt kind of stupid for not yelling, for not flipping the table or saying the one perfect line I'd probably rehearse later in the shower. None of that happened. My feet just moved. The hallway smelled like burnt coffee, same as every morning. The badge reader chirped and the door opened like nothing had changed. That small green light did more damage than the firing. It meant the system still recognized me. People didn't. A junior associate stepped aside to let me pass. Eyes down, shoulders tight. He mouthed sorry without sound and pretended to check his phone. I nodded back. That was the exchange. Apologies without witnesses. At the elevator, someone from finance rushed up and hit the button hard, like urgency could outrun consequences. He glanced at my empty hands, then at my face. The smile he started died halfway. We rode down in silence. His foot kept tapping. Mine didn't. When the doors opened, he stayed put. I stepped out alone. I kept thinking maybe I should have said something smarter, something sharp. But I didn't trust myself not to say the wrong thing and hand them what they wanted, proof I was unstable, emotional, replaceable. So I swallowed it. Again. They'd been shrinking me for months anyway. Emails I used to be on vanished. Meetings happened without me and then landed on my calendar as updates. Decisions arrived finished, wrapped, and unarguable. The quiet kind of demotion that lets everyone deny it's happening. Outside the building. My phone buzzed once. Then again. I didn't check it. Not yet. I needed a minute where nobody needed me to explain anything. I didn't prepare for revenge. I prepared to survive. There's a moment after something ends where your body keeps acting like it hasn't. Muscle memory. Habit. I stood there longer than necessary, breathing through it, letting the noise settle. If you've ever felt yourself being edged out and couldn't tell when it started, you know that feeling in your chest. Not fear, not anger, just pressure. I turned away from the entrance and started walking. Still without a plan, but no longer pretending I'd left something behind. 3 years earlier, They cut research and development so fast it felt like losing a limb. No warning, no apology. Just a slide in a meeting and a sentence about temporary discipline. Nobody asked who would bleed. The lab smelled like overheated plastic that night. I remember because the vents were broken again, and the air felt thick, like it didn't want to move. Most people went home early. I didn't. I sat there with a half-cold cup of coffee and started tearing things apart. Not dramatically, quietly. I rewrote pieces of the architecture that had been touched by too many hands, pulled dependencies back into one place, simplified workflows, centralized access. Not because I needed control, because every time leadership panicked, they added another layer, another committee, another person who didn't understand the system but wanted authority over it. "Why are you locking this down?" someone from product asked when they saw the new permissions. I didn't look up. Because if this breaks, they'll blame the people who built it, not the people who cut it. He laughed like I was exaggerating. Then he stopped laughing when he realized I wasn't. Legal reviewed the patent filings like they always did. Slow, careful, bored. They approved the structure without comment. To them, it was just paperwork. To me, it was a seatbelt. I read every line, every footnote, every clause that could come back and bite. "You're being paranoid," my manager said when I asked one too many questions. Maybe, but paranoia keeps systems alive when budgets don't. I filed everything clean, above board. No shell games, no tricks, just protections layered where they belonged. If leadership wanted flexibility, they'd get it. If they wanted to cut people loose, the work wouldn't die with them. That wasn't genius. That was fear. There's a difference, and people like to pretend there isn't. I packed up sometime after midnight. The lab lights clicked off row by row behind me. I didn't feel proud. I felt tired. And oddly calm, like I'd done something necessary but slightly unforgivable. Later, when people started acting like I'd hidden something from them, I remembered that night. The smell, the silence, the way nobody argued when money got tight. That was when I learned how fast protection starts looking like suspicion. Back in my apartment, I dumped the old contracts onto the table. Paper slid everywhere. A sharp edge caught my finger. Dust lifted and hung there for a second. The cheap lamp flickered like it always did when I leaned too hard on the cord. I wasn't looking for a weapon. I was looking for clarity. Something solid. Something that didn't care how loud the boardroom had gotten. I spread the pages out and worked methodically. No panic. No drama. Just reading. Again. Slower this time. There it was. A paragraph nobody had argued over because it sounded boring when it was written. No bold font. No dramatic language. Just conditions. Triggers. Outcomes. If the principal architect is removed from direct project oversight, operational control and intellectual property authority revert automatically. My stomach flipped. Not excitement, not relief. Dread. Because this wasn't a theory anymore. This wasn't something I built just in case. They had already done it. Clean, public, irreversible. I remembered the meeting where this clause passed. Legal had skimmed it. Finance hadn't looked up. Leadership wanted speed, not nuance. Standard protection. Someone had muttered. Fine. Next slide. At the time, I'd almost spoken up, almost explained why it mattered. Then I'd stop myself. People don't listen when nothing is on fire. I sat back and pressed my thumb against the paper cut until it stung enough to keep me present. The room was quiet except for the lamp buzzing. My phone lit up on the table. I ignored it. This was the moment where things stop being about intention and start being about consequence. Not revenge, not strategy, just math. Action followed by result. Here's the part nobody tells you. Reading something you wrote years ago and realizing it still holds is unsettling. It means you trusted yourself more than the people around you. Quick aside. Since you're here with me, contracts don't care how nice someone used to be. They only care what was written when everyone thought they were safe. I gathered the papers into a clean stack. The flicker steadied. The noise in my head didn't. They'd pulled the trigger in public. Now the system was doing exactly what it was designed to do. I watched the demo on a live stream from my kitchen table. The mug I grabbed had a chipped rim. The coffee was still too hot. I burned my tongue and didn't bother fixing it. He walked on stage like nothing had happened. Relaxed shoulders, easy smile, the kind people practice in mirrors. He talked about vision and scalability and momentum, stacking words like they meant ownership. Behind him, the platform loaded. The cursor blinked once, then the screen froze. No dramatic crash, no alarm. Just a pause that stretched a second too long. Someone in the audience laughed, not because it was funny, because laughter buys time. The line appeared clean and flat, white on black. Authorization expired. His smile stayed up, but it stopped reaching his eyes. He cleared his throat. A hand moved off the clicker and back again, like muscle memory refusing to update. "Minor hiccup," he said, waving it off. "We'll be back in just a moment." The technical lead leaned in from the side, whispering fast. I couldn't hear the words, but I recognized the posture. Shoulders tight, jaw locked. Not confidence. Another laugh rippled through the room, this one thinner. Then the chief operating officer stood up. She didn't rush. She didn't soften it. She held her tablet like evidence. "We ran this in rehearsal," she said. "Why doesn't production recognize the key?" No answer came back right away. She didn't sit down. "I'm asking a simple question," she added. Louder now. "Do we still control this platform?" The word control hung there. Heavy. Final. On stage. People started talking over each other. Hands moved. Someone unplugged something that didn't need unplugging. The screen didn't change. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt distance. Like watching a building you once worked in lose power, floor by floor. Here's the strange part. When it finally broke in public, I knew I wasn't going to fix it. Not because I couldn't, because it wasn't mine anymore to save. The live stream cut to a wide shot. Applause never came. I set the mug down carefully and turned off the sound, letting the silence do its work. The second outage didn't stay inside the building. It rolled straight into customer systems. Phones lit up everywhere, all at once, like something had finally tipped. I started getting messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Short ones, careful ones. Nobody asked how I was. They asked what happened. By afternoon, he went on record. I watched the clip later. I didn't need sound to know when my name came up. His jaw tightened, his shoulders squared. That tone people use when they're about to frame something ugly as necessary. He called it sabotage. He said my name like it explained everything. Within an hour, the story hardened. Former executive, disgruntled. Access abuse. The words stacked neatly. Ready-made. They always are. My phone rang again. This time, it was my mother. She didn't say hello. She just cried. That did more damage than the headlines. I held the phone away from my ear and waited for her breathing to slow. "I raised you better than this," she finally said. Not accusing, just scared. I didn't do anything. I told her. The words sounded thin even to me. She believed me. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that belief didn't change what people wanted to hear. I thought about calling a lawyer, thought about writing a statement, thought about correcting the record before it set like concrete. Every option felt wrong, defensive, reactive, like stepping into a trap someone else built. A former teammate texted, then erased it, then sent a single line. "This is getting bad." I didn't answer. Here's the part I didn't expect. Staying quiet wasn't passive. It took effort. It took restraint. It meant letting them talk themselves into a corner without me giving them a wall to lean on. I sat with the noise instead. Let it run. Let the accusations stretch until they started contradicting each other. If you've ever watched someone lie in public, you know there's a moment when the lie needs backup. That moment was coming. I didn't move. I didn't explain. I didn't correct a thing. I waited. Someone inside cracked. The files hit my inbox just after midnight. No subject line, No greeting, just attachments stacked like bricks. Emails, access logs, internal legal memos stamped reviewed and then ignored. The kind of paperwork people assume disappears if nobody talks about it. I opened one email and knew who it was before I saw the signature. The rhythm gave it away. Short sentences, no filler. He always wrote like he was trying not to waste anyone's time. That realization landed harder than the leak itself. He had warned them. Repeatedly. Quietly. In writing. Every message circled the same point. Removing me would trigger things they couldn't undo. Each warning had been acknowledged, then buried. One email stood out. The reply came from the executive floor. 3 lines. Polite, dismissive. We'll handle it internally. Thanks for flagging. I sat there longer than I needed to, scrolling through proof I never asked him to risk sending. Proof that turned my silence into something heavier than patience. By morning, the news shifted. Not dramatically. Just enough. An internal memo went out. Leadership change effective immediately. No press conference. No explanation. His name disappeared from the company page like it had never been there. Resigned. Quietly. My phone buzzed once. A single message from an unfamiliar number. You should be clear now. No apology followed. No check-in. Nothing that made it easier. I stared at the screen, then locked it and set the phone face down. Here's the part people don't talk about. Vindication doesn't feel like relief. It feels like loss wearing a cleaner suit. Someone else paid for a decision that never should have been made. I didn't reach out. I didn't thank him. I didn't know how without making it about me. By noon, the board announced an emergency session. Investors started asking questions that couldn't be redirected. The story had weight now. Documents always do. I closed the laptop and leaned back, letting the silence settle again. Different this time. Sharper. Less forgiving. For anyone listening along, this is where things stopped being about blame and started being about choices. The next move wasn't theirs anymore. The call came late, after the board stopped returning messages and the news cycle moved on to something louder. A calm voice. No apology. No urgency. Just a name I recognized from years ago, back when competitors still pretended they weren't watching each other. They didn't posture. No speeches about synergy or shared values. We met the next day, and the room smelled like lemon cleaner, sharp and deliberate. Too clean. It made me uneasy. A tablet slid across the table. Numbers filled the screen. Serious ones. The kind that don't need decoration. We're interested in the patents, one of them said. Hands folded. Eyes steady. All of them. I let the silence stretch. Watched them sit with it. That was new. Usually I was the one filling gaps. Explaining. Smoothing edges. My team comes with me, I said. Flat. No build-up? A pause. Not long, but real. That complicates things. It makes them usable. I replied, already pushing my chair back a fraction. Otherwise, you're buying paper. One of them leaned forward. You're asking for operational autonomy. I'm asking for guardrails. I said, you don't get to gut it the way they did. They exchanged looks. Calculated. Nobody smiled. The negotiations dragged. Days. Not hours. Every clause came with a counter. Every concession came with a price. I almost walked the first time they suggested replacing senior engineers with consultants. I almost walked again when they framed ethics like a branding concern. Each time, they adjusted. Not out of kindness. Out of math. Here's something I'll admit without cleaning it up. Having leverage didn't feel powerful. It felt heavy. Like every choice carried people with it. When we finally stood to leave, nothing was signed. No hands shaken. Just an understanding that the next move was mine. If you've ever held something everyone suddenly wants, you know the quiet that follows. It isn't peace. It's pressure. Waiting to see what you'll protect when it costs you something. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Blue ink. No ceremony. No countdown. Just a clean page waiting for a decision I'd already made 3 times in my head and still wasn't ready for. The attorney across from me slid the last document forward. He didn't explain it. He didn't need to. The room knew what it was. "Once this is executed," he said, tapping the margin with one finger, "control transfers immediately." I nodded. My hand hovered. "A beat too long. This closes their access." Someone else added, "Quieter now. Completely." I pressed the pen down and signed. One line. My name steady. That was it. No maybe. No appeal window. No version of the story where I walk it back and pretend this was temporary. Phones started buzzing before the ink dried. Messages stacked. Alerts. Headlines forming themselves. The number traveled faster than the context ever could. $1.5 billion. Big enough that people stopped reacting like humans and started reacting like spectators. A junior lawyer glanced up. "Congratulations," he offered, like he wasn't sure that was the right word. I didn't answer. I capped the pen and set it down carefully, like it might bruise. I stepped out of the conference room and sat on the floor in the hallway. Cold tile, back against the wall. Nobody rushed me. Nobody asked if I was okay. That was a relief. Here's something you don't hear much: finishing something doesn't feel like winning. It feels like silence rushing in after noise you didn't realize you'd been leaning on. I stayed there until the buzzing slowed and my breathing did too. When I stood, my legs worked. My name was already everywhere. What I felt about it hadn't caught up yet. I handed the signed folder back without looking at it again and walked toward the exit, carrying the weight of a decision that finally belonged to me. Their company unraveled fast once the patents were gone, meetings canceled, executives rotated out like bad lighting. Press releases tried to sound steady while everything underneath them shifted. I heard about it the way you hear about storms after they've already passed. Mine didn't feel like a victory parade. I didn't go back to the building, didn't watch the interviews, didn't sit through commentary pretending to explain what happened. A former board member left a voicemail. Careful tone, lots of words about regret and misunderstanding. He stopped just short of asking if I'd reconsider. I deleted it without finishing. There was nothing left to negotiate. A junior engineer from my old team called later. Voice tight, grateful, a little scared. "You really meant it when you said you'd take us with you," he said. "I don't say things I can't live with," I told him. That was true. It was also the line that finally made this real. Some nights, I still replay that meeting. Not the shouting, not the fallout. Just the sound of my laptop closing, that small plastic click. The moment I chose not to explain myself to people who had already decided who I was. I said thank you. I meant it. I think. Not because I was grateful to be fired. Because it ended something that had been breaking me slowly, politely, with a smile. Here's what I know now. And this is the part I'll leave you with. Power doesn't come from winning louder than someone else. It comes from knowing when to stop asking for permission to protect what you built. I didn't walk away clean. I walked away clear. Whatever comes next will be my choice. And for the first time in a long time, that feels like enough.